Welcome to Help Me DIY, guys. This is my 170-inch 2.35:1 screen, and I built it myself. I think it's pretty awesome. The reason you're going to want to watch this video is because I've watched several other videos on how to build this, and I think I've incorporated some of the best things together into this screen. Not only that, but I go through the very detailed steps that you're going to need to do this. And I talk about the reason why you might choose some options over some of the other options and help you plan and design your screen. The entire screen, everything here, including the LED lighting, was under $250. I'm going to have all the links to the products in the description below. Personally, I love the little LED backlighting detail. It really helps bring the screen out. It's one of those options that you can do or you can not do. It's up to you, personal preference. After starting to edit this video, one thing I realized that I left out was really talking about the acoustical transparency of a spandex screen. That's one of the major reasons why I wanted to use this material, because there are several manufactured screens that you can buy to make your own screen, but spandex is by far the most acoustically transparent, meaning that the sound from my speakers that are behind that are gonna pass through it uninterrupted, well, mostly uninterrupted, and it's gonna have a much better sound than any other screen that you're gonna use. So one of the other huge benefits of this screen is that the spandex weave is so tight, you can't see the weave, you can't see any lines, anything like that, like you can on some of these manufactured screens. So you're gonna get a better picture quality and you're gonna get better acoustical transparency, which both are very important to me. In this video, I try to go into a lot of detail and show you how I did everything, starting from building the frame, picking out your fabric, stretching it, applying this felt border. All of the steps you need are right here in this video, so check it out. Hope you guys enjoyed it. All right, sadly, we're back in time, and I'm at the very beginning of this project, and I have not started it yet. All I've done is purchase the wood. So one tip is leave the wood in the room that it's gonna be in permanently for a couple days so that it can adjust to the moisture in the room. Yeah, if you build it too soon, it can crack. Just a common woodworking thing. But I would just want to go through my thought process and how I am figuring out and calculating the screen size. So originally I wanted to do a 16:9 screen here, but I realized that because of the width that the fabric comes in, that I'm going to be using, it's 58 inches wide, and the frame I needed would have had to be 76 inches tall, and they say you shouldn't stretch it any more than 71 or 72 inches. So that made me go to a 2.35:1 ratio screen, because I can still play movies and take up a huge space, and that lowers the height of my screen a little bit. So I can still get a good, decent, almost 140-inch 16:9 image on there when I need to do that. And I also realized if I went that way, I could cover both speakers with the acoustically transparent screen made out of spandex. But as you can see, I measured these dots and they're very close to the edge of the speakers. So my frame needs to clear the speakers. So for me, that's where the first major calculation comes in. After determining the maximum height of the screen, I needed to decide on the width. After ruling out my first plan because the height was too high, now I have to deal with the width to make sure that it lines up. So let me show you my calculations. So these are my rough draft pieces of paper. As you can see, my original 16:9 was gonna be 140 inches. And after doing some math, 76 inches tall though. So that wasn't gonna work. So we went to a, not to scale, obviously, 2.35:1 ratio. And I need to include these speakers behind it. So my first calculations were getting me to a 70-inch height, which was fine. But after realizing the thicknesses of the wood and everything, they were actually going to be touching the edge of my speakers here. So the main calculation is from this edge of this speaker to this edge of this speaker is 155 inches. So I need my frame to be at least 156 inches from the inside edge to the inside edge to be able to clear the speakers and not interfere with them. So my calculations start with 156 inches. The width of a 1x4 is 3.5 inches, so two of those added together is 7 inches. So with this number here is the outside edge to outside edge width of the frame. And I knew that I wanted a 2-inch felt border because I already ordered the 3-inch felt tape. And you'll see that 1 inch is going to go over the outside edge and 2 inches of it will fall over the face. But anyway, so I have a 2-inch border on both sides, so that's 4 inches. So if I subtract that border, I'm left with 159 inches of screen width, the actual part that will be projected on. So taking 159 inches for a width, going to a screen size calculator. That means the height, if I'm doing a 2.35 to 1 screen, is going to be 67 2/3 inches. So this would be the actual viewing screen size, and this is going to be my outer frame diameters. And you can see it is at the very maximum of the stretch distance. So what I decided to do is, instead of making the inner supports also 1x4s, I'm going to make them 1x3s, which I saw recommended somewhere else on AVS forum. So I redid my calculations by using 1x3s on the edge. So I started out with my minimum 156 inches again to clear my speakers. Now the width of these are 2.5 inches each, so that's 5 inches. So the outside of the frame is going to be 161 inches. So if I subtract my 2-inch borders again, I'm getting 157 inches for the width of my viewable screen. So going back to that calculator, that tells me that I need a 66.8-inch height for the screen. And if I add back the 2-inch border on the top and the bottom, that means my frame height is going to need to be 70.8 inches. So much better than my frame over here. So I forgot to mention that this number is +4 for the 2-inch top and bottom borders, giving us that height. So by using 1x3s instead of 1x4s for the internal supports, I can lower the overall frame height by 1 inch. So every bit helps for my stretching, and it'll make the overall structure lighter. So after final calculation of your screen size, you can start figuring out the exact layout. Now, of course, the way you need to calculate it is going to be based on your room, your format of the screen, the layout, everything like that. So again, my main concern is getting past these speakers on the side. So now that I have the dimensions, I can start drawing this out. But 1x4 at the very top. Of course, this isn't going to be to scale exactly. It's just going to give me the measurements that I'm going to need. I always use a pencil when doing this stuff. All right, so as I said, this is going to be a 1x3 on the sides and 1x4s on the bottom and top. So we are gonna need a way to hang this thing, of course, and we want to add some supports so that it doesn't twist on us. So my idea is to add 4 additional sets of supports in between, again, all out of 1x3s. And another important reason for doing this is because I'm gonna have 2 cleats. Pretend that those lines are parallel. Parallel to the ground, that is. So I'm going to have 2 sets of cleats that I'm going to use to hang on the wall on cleats that are attached to the wall. So this is the overall look of what it's going to be. Now for the all-important measurements. So we decided that if it was 156 inches that we needed from inside here to inside here, so we're going to mark this from here to here as 156 inches. Okay, so again, that will help us determine the very outside edge. So knowing that this is a 1x3, we know that it's 2.5 inches from here to here and 2.5 inches from here to here. So that's 5 inches. Add that together and we get 161, which is the same calculation we got up here. So that's good. Measure 2, 3, 4, 5 times before you cut this stuff. We know that this 1x4 is going to be 161 inches on both the top and bottom. And all of these supports are going to be the same height conveniently. And we need the total height to be 70.8. So we're just going to start out with 70.8. And that is the height all the way up here, including our top and bottom rails. So now we can do a little bit of math. These are 1x4s. So from here to here is 3.5 inches. Another 3.5 inches up here, and that totals 7. You're correct, very good. So 70.8 minus 7 should be about 63.8. So 63.8. Okay, so we know that every board needs to be 63.8 inches. So for the cleats in here, they don't really matter as long as the cleat that you hang on the wall, so pretend this is the cleat behind it on the wall, you're going to want it to be smaller, of course, so that the sides do not interfere with it. And then you're going to have a second one over here, but we'll get to that later. That'll be one of the last things that we're worried about. And I am also planning on making LED light strip around the back. So if you're going to do that, you'll want to take this into consideration too. If I wasn't doing that, then I would probably have this frame, all of the pieces that you see two-dimensionally here would actually be at the same level. I would just attach these directly here on the inside with pocket screws. But because I am adding the LED light, I'm actually going to attach this. This is actually going to overlap the supports here on the back so that it stands out the thickness of this board, which is 3/4 of an inch. Because I am going to cut some more strips, and on the back side of this frame all the way around, kind of in the middle of these boards or towards the inside, I'm going to have 3/4 inch strips that are going to line up touching the wall. And the reason you want to do that is because you want your frame, your screen, to be flat all the way against the wall, because if there's any space between the wall and your frame and you have LED lights behind it, those are going to reflect and show through behind here and make your image dull. So you definitely, if you're doing LED lights, you want this flat against the wall. So for all of these supports, we are going to use pocket holes and the Craig jig. So we're going to have 2 on each one. Pretend this is, we're looking at the back of the frame now, because we're going to drill these holes in the back. Not that it's really going to matter too much, because we're going to have fabric over the front that would cover these up if you did them over the front, but you don't want any chance of any little irregularities on the front that could interfere with your screen and not make it completely flat. So one last issue, since we are going to be 161 inches wide, that is like over 13 feet. And the only way that you're going to get a board this big is if you get a 16-foot 1x4, which is A, really hard to find right now, B, really hard to get home if you were to find one. So what I decided to do is use 2 8-foot boards to make this. So we're actually going to have like one board here, and then we're going to have our pocket holes to join these 2 boards together, and I'll put some wood glue in this actual joint probably, because it's more of an important one. And then down here on the opposite side, so this will be 8 feet, and then this board will be whatever 161 inches minus 8 feet is. And then just to offset it, I'm going to make this one over here my 8-foot board, and this board will be the exact same size as this one up here. And again, we're going to put some joinery in there. If you guys have never used a Craig pocket hole jig, you're in for a treat. These things are fantastic. They're not very expensive. Of course, all the stuff I'll put links in the description, but they do make really great even joinery. Now, ideally, would I like to have more than ½ inch between my speaker and the frame? Yes, of course, absolutely. But if I did that, again, the concern is that my screen would grow too tall for the fabric that I want to use. And if I made it smaller so that the speaker was on the outside, then the screen overall, I think, would just be too small. So here we are. So what you want to do when you're at Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever picking out your lumber, you just want to put one end on the ground and look down it. And you can see that this one is actually really straight, which is not easy to find. So if you find one that is bent or warped in any way, throw it aside, keep looking through them, get the straightest ones you can. So how much wood did I buy? So going back to my diagram here, I wanted 2 8-foot boards for the bottom, 2 8-foot boards for the top. We'll just have a little bit left over. So that is 4 1x4s. And then I'm gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 1x3s. But I went ahead and got 6 1x4s as well because I'm gonna rip them into 3/4 inch widths and have that be around the back of it for our LED strip. All right, let my measurements begin. Wow, this one is actually right at 8 feet. All right, simple math. So for our top rail up here, we have 8 feet for the first one, and that is 96 inches. We want it to be 161 inches, so we subtract our 96 that we already have, and this one needs to be 65 inches. So I'm going to be cutting 2 of the 8-foot boards, the one down here and the one up here, to 65 inches. I'm going to cut them both at the same time so I know that they're both exactly the same length. I'm going to measure one. I'm actually going to mark it in the center and on both ends just to make it easier for me when I get to my saw, since I don't know which side I'm going to be cutting with yet. Okay, I have my line here, and I'm just going to mark that this is the waist side. All right, here we are in the woodworking shop. What I did here is make sure that these 2 boards are perfectly flush. I got our marks that I made here lined up, and I'm gonna err on the side of caution and cut it just a tiny bit too big, because you can always make it smaller. You cannot make it larger. All right, fun time. It is time to join our first wood. So the 8-foot section and the smaller piece that we cut off actually drew the pocket holes on the 8-foot section, but it's easier to work with a smaller piece of wood, so I'm actually going to drill them into the small piece that we just cut off. And I have the Craig 2000 Pro kit or something, I think they call it. So it comes with all of the little options they have, and I have used this one many times, and I have it set up and attached to this piece of plywood. So this is what I'm going to use to drill the holes. I'm not going to make this a tutorial on how to use your Craig jig, but all I'm doing is putting the piece of wood here and the 2 outside holes. I'm going to be drilling the pocket holes out with this bit. It's got a collar on it, so it stops at exactly the right spot. And it's easy enough to do, to video with one hand and drill with your other hand. So these are the 2 holes that we just cut there, angled perfectly for the jig to use different size screws to go through here and attach this piece to whatever we want. In my case, that whatever I want is our 8-foot board. All right, let's try to do this. I have that piece sitting on another of the 1x4s and over here at the end, so that I can lift them up and have them pretty level here. So a couple things I'm going to do. I'm going to put some glue on the end of this to make it stronger. I'm going to screw in the 2 screws, and I'm going to use this called a face clamp from Craig to clamp this onto the wood to help them be perfectly flush, because that is the most important thing here. And of course, we want them to be flush this way horizontally as well. And I'll take my scrap instructions, put them underneath just to protect the carpet from glue. Yeah, I'm going to start with the glue. Let's get it on both ends. And use the face clamp. All right, pull them as tight as I can together, line them up as much as possible. Clamp them into place. Now when I put the screws in, the screws are actually going to pull it a little bit closer. So I have some 1 1/4 inch screws. All right, it is nice and flush all the way around, so I'm just gonna put another one of these 1x4s underneath it to support it and let it dry here. So the next thing I did is I ripped some 1-inch strips off of one of my extra 1x4s. That let me get 3 of these strips, and I'm gonna go ahead and apply it to the back of this joint that we just did. That's going to help strengthen this joint, as well as provide the spot where we're going to put our LED strips back here. So I'm going to go ahead, I measured like 1 inch from the bottom, because when we do it on the sides, we're going to have 1x3s, so they're going to be 1 inch shorter, and that'll give us about the same distance on the top and bottom and edges for light uniformity. So all I'm going to do is rotate this over. So this is the 3/4 inch thickness. I'm going to apply glue here and here, fold it back down, and use my nail gun to go ahead and nail it and glue it into place. Now on our scrap pieces we cut off, I went ahead and shot one of my brad nails through here just to make sure that it did not come all the way through, because you don't want that to happen. I'm using these 16 gauge 1 1/4 inch finish nails. So for the fun part, just okay, so 1 8-foot strip was done, and I went ahead and left about the equal amount on the top and side there, because we're gonna have the next one is gonna tee up to it here to allow the light to go around the side. And to finish this top piece, I'm gonna measure the distance here and go ahead and see how much I need to continue on down there to have the same gap. Cut that one and attach it. So I duplicated that. I have our top and our bottom finished now with our little LED strip area, and I added a few more calculations to this. So our center speaker, I know that this speaker is right in the exact middle between 2 studs. So I went ahead and marked out approximately where the other studs are on my wall. So I know that at the edge of the speaker here is 1 stud, and there are 4 more studs in the middle of these 2 studs that surround this speaker. So I just measured out my studs are 12 inches on center, because that is an exterior wall there. So what I wanted to do is make sure that these 2 supports that are going to hold the beam that holds this whole thing up, I want to make sure that this beam here can be put on 2 studs. So I went ahead and did all those calculations. So I know that our first support has to start 22 3/4 inches away from our center, and taking into account that this is 2.5 inches because it is a 3x1. I know that we have to go 21.5 inches to start the other one, so that there will be it'll be 24 inches on center between these 2. So we'll have 2 studs right in the middle. And then I calculated 26.5 inches for this piece that is gonna go from the outside edge to the outside edge of this. So that measurement is essentially the 24 inches plus the width of one of these boards, 2.5 inches. So that is the new math. So now that I know the distances of this one, and I know that this one is going to be just flush to the outside, these are going to be exactly the same, mirrored over here. So I can go ahead and take my 1x3s and cut them down to 63.8 inches. Go ahead and use my Craig jig on each end of those, and I can attach them to the top and bottom. Get this thing framed out. All right, so for my 6 middle support beams, that's them. I just cut them all to 63.8 inches. And just a note, since these are 1x3s that are actually 2.5 inches thick, instead of using A and C, we're gonna be using A and B. So I'm just gonna center it on A and B. All right, let me show you something here. So even though I tried to get super straight lumber, I don't even know if you can see here, but there is a slight curve in over here, and it kind of bows out a tiny bit on the right side. So the side that it bows out on is where I put my pocket holes, so that will be the back of the screen. So the front, it will be a little bit of concave instead of convex, so that it does not interfere with my material. That might matter, I don't know. I just thought of it as I was doing this, so just trying to intentionally be consistent and check. Next, I'm just kind of lay out all of our parts. I just randomly put them out there. Make sure everything is lining up pretty well as we expected. There is a little gap on the 2 middle ones because either our top and or bottom are bowed out a little bit, but that's okay. Once we attach these, it'll should pull everything back square. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and take a tape measure and measure out the distances here. Make sure they're how we calculated. Since my frame length is 161 inches, 80 1/2 is the middle, so I marked it here. And go ahead and measure 80 1/2 from this side and 80 1/2 from this side, and they should both line up in the middle. Just double check now. It's much easier now. So I know from this middle line that I have to go over 22 3/4 inches, and I'll make a mark there, and that's where this board will start. And I just realized that either could be the top or bottom right now because it's all the same, but I'm gonna wanna make this side the top so that I can just lift it up and stick it on the wall instead of having to try to spin this thing around. So in that case, you can see here where the 2 cleats are gonna be. So those 2 things are what is going to hang it up. And since these are 3/4 of an inch thick, and this part here is 3/4 of an inch thick, the whole perimeter of this should be flush with the wall, as will the cleat. Next, it's just gonna be back to my face clamp to clamp up the sides, make sure that, especially that the bottom of this, which is gonna be the front of the screen, is flush with the front of this, and put the screws in. So the screws are self-tapping. You don't have to tap into that, of course, but what you're probably gonna see is when you have it lined up that there is a tiny gap, and you just wanna go nice and slow with this, and you should see eventually that it pulls that gap nice and tight. The main thing you want to accomplish is that this edge is smooth and even with the top board, because again, we're going to be putting this other strip like this over here, so it's going to help strengthen this joint, as well as in each corner I bought a piece of metal that we're going to put in here to make sure the corners are tight. So let me show you that now. So I just bought these 2.5 inch brackets from Home Depot when I picked up the wood. Sadly, all they had was galvanized. No reason for galvanized, but now my screen won't rust. I guess that's more than I can say for my drill bit. So just 4 screws in here. Make sure that the bottom of this bracket does not go past the bottom of here so it doesn't interfere with your screen. I have mine all the way up here, almost flush with the top. All right, so after doing all 4 corners, I just put some scrap underneath the corners to lift it up off the ground a little bit, and I'm gonna do all of the inner pieces now. And what I decided is I'm not gonna use this clamp to make it flush. It's easy enough right now that I can hold it and line it up exactly where it needs to be. And I'll exaggerate it here, but I'm going to attach it raised a little bit, not that much, just barely raised like this, so that it is off the surface of the screen. I just do not want that material to be touching these supports at all and making any lines in the material. So just like a fraction of an inch raised is where I'm gonna put it. All right, so I can feel it's really uniform in the bottom and on the top here. And as you saw, once you start drilling the first one in, it's gonna push the wood away until it starts biting, and then it'll pull it back. I have all of the support members attached now, so I'm gonna go ahead and use more of these strips that I made here for our LED lights and run them down the sides now. So I cut the cleats to length that I wanted, and I tilted my saw blade at 45 degrees. And I'm just gonna make a cut like this to cut the edge at 45 degrees. In retrospect, what I should have done is get some 1x6 boards, and then I could just cut them in half with a 45-degree angle on the saw blade, and then I would have two mating pieces. All right, so I just cut two boards like that, and then all you have to do is flip one around. And as you can see, they are gonna mate like this and lock up. All right, so here is a pair of cleats. You can see how they match up. Now there are two ways that they can go. They can either go like this, or you could flip this whole assembly over and they line up like this. Either way, I guess theoretically would work. But I'm gonna do them like this because the bottom one, this is gonna be the wall here. So the wall, it's gonna have a little V sticking up and out of the wall, and then this one is going to lower on top of that. It's going to lock itself in place. So you want to make sure that you have the one on top oriented how you want it. We're going to save that one for later, and this one we're just going to attach right here to the back of our frame. Of course, make sure you're putting it on the back. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it was kind of just pointing at paper and talking about it. If I did not have an LED on here, and if I did not have this piece, what I would do is just use the pocket holes and attach it flush here, because then the screen would still be flush on the wall. But I cannot do that with the LEDs. You have to make sure that this is the same height as this so that it is all flush on the wall. So I'm just gonna go ahead, I'm gonna use some wood glue and some screws and just screw this into the back here. Now I do want it to be level, of course. I don't have to have it exactly level, because my plan is after these are attached, I'm gonna get a couple people to help me hold the frame in place, and I'm gonna level it. I put a level on the top of the screen here, and I'm gonna make sure it is level. And then I'm just gonna hold this on the wall and mate it up to it while the frame is level, and just screw this into the wall at that location. So even if this one were to be a little bit off and I match this one up to it while the frame is level, the whole thing will be level. Just for completeness sake, what I did is measured from the bottom there down 16 inches and marked 16 inches on both sides. So I'm just gonna line this up with the marks and attach it like that. So again, here I'm just applying glue, lining up to my marks, and I'm gonna use some 1 1/4 inch drywall screws to attach this. And to prevent the wood from cracking, I'm gonna use a 3 32 inch drill bit to pre-drill. Make sure you do not go through to the front. And the good thing about these screws is you can just screw them tight and it'll kind of countersink itself. All right, you can see the screw heads are nice and flush with our wood, and it's glued on, nailed on. Now this is the most important piece right here. This is gonna support all the weight. So between this cleat and the second one, you wanna make sure that they are attached and not gonna come off. I just propped it up against the wall. That's pretty freaking exciting. So it looks like my measurements were perfect. Getting the speakers to be inside the frame. Of course, it's gonna be about 2 feet off the ground where that bottom piece of blue tape is. It will be the bottom of the screen. The top will be up there where those are. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And now you can see the face of it, so you can see how that is just barely inset around here, so as not to interfere with the fabric that's going to come over the front. And here are our cleats. So we should have, if my calculations are correct, a stud here and a stud here. Then we're gonna put the other cleat on and attach to the wall next. All right, so here are the cleats that are gonna go up on the wall. I just prepped them a little bit by figuring out where the middle was and going 12 inches apart where my stud should be. I just pre-drilled a little hole in here so they won't crack, and I'm using these Simpson strong tie things that are awesome. Sadly, I only had 3 of them left, so I went ahead and had a little extra lag bolt here, so I'm going to use that with a washer for my 4th one. So I'm going to have some people help me hold this up in place and just go ahead and drill these in. My spandex from Spandex World arrived earlier than expected, so I have my white, and this is called like charcoal or something. I'll put links to all this stuff in the description. So some people use black on the back and then white on the front. Some people use like a gray on the back and a white on the front. I guess it depends on how dark your room is going to be. So if you have a lot of ambient light, you want the black on the back because it makes it more of a gray color as your final color. So the more white it is, the more of a completely dark room you need. So mine's going to be pretty darn dark, so I opted for the a little bit lighter finished color. I got the frame standing up out of the way, vacuumed the area one more time. Didn't want any little pieces of wood to interfere with my spandex. This stuff is really thick and nice, but you can see here that this side is a little bit lighter than this side, so I'm going to assume that that is the back and this is the front, although there's really no indication, but that's how I'm going to do it. So that means I need to flip this over because the part facing the ground is going to be the front. All right, spread it out as flat as I could get it. I'm just going to drop the frame on top of it, face first. You can see there's a good 2 to 3 inch gap on the top and bottom that I'm going to have to stretch it and come over the rail. So I'm going to use this diagram that I was given and kind of follow along with what it says. I'm going to start in the very middle, stretch it, staple it up here close to the edge. The least I have to stretch it, and then go back and do the other side, then do the edges, and work my way around in this pattern. I guess I should mention that before this step, some people actually sand the face of the frame so that this does not get snagged or anything. Mine actually seems really smooth and all the joints are really well done, so I'm not going to worry about that. The only thing I will probably do is the front corners. I'm probably going to sand these down on both the top and bottom around all of the corners, just because we're going to be stretching fabric over it and I don't want that to pierce or tear our fabric at all. Three out of my 4 corners were pretty perfect here. I just have one corner where I couldn't get it too straight because I didn't pull it tight enough in the width direction, so I'm gonna need to undo a couple staples here and just pull the outside part tighter, but that corner up there is good. Okay, not bad for my first try. All right, lessons learned. I wasn't able to get it to look like I wanted, so all I did is use a flathead screwdriver and pry out every single nail on the side that I didn't like, or every single staple, that is. and just like that, it's already flat. So I'm just going to put a little more tension on it now and re-nail the whole thing. Now we're cooking with gas. That looks much better. So there's one tiny little wrinkle down here that I will go ahead and resolve, and then I'm gonna put the white down and do the top layer. Before I start the white, I'm just gonna use scissors and trim all of this off. All right, so the first one was our practice one, and this is the one that's gonna be seen and really count. So I think this time I'm gonna try something different than the normal wisdom that people tell you after having to unstaple that side. Here's my thinking, let me know what you think. So because we know that we can pull it in this direction and this direction perfectly evenly, because it's the maximum stretch we wanna do, and it's gonna line up against our frame. If I pull this one and just slightly pull out as I go down the side, the same way on the front and back, I think I'm gonna just go in the middle, back and forth, and work my way out to the edges without doing anything to the edge first. And that way, if I do it all evenly on the way down, all I have to do is pull that one tight, bam, 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 and I'm done. So that's what I'm gonna try this time. We'll see how it works. All right, that worked out really well. This is the first time I've pulled it over to see it, but there's a couple places like that one more little staple will fix. Same over here. That corner is actually pretty perfect. And this one I just need to tidy up. But yeah, I think it was much easier to do it that way. And there we have it, one step closer. Just gonna enjoy and appreciate it. Has a lot of work to get to this stage. A couple more steps to go. This just came in the mail today from Carl's. I checked out one on Amazon. This is the felt for the border, and the reviews said that it just did not stick as good and it wasn't as dark as Carl's. So everybody recommends it, so I'm going with it. I got the 3-inch wide one. Here's the beautiful black felt. So I'll be putting it on the border. So 2 inches will be going over here, and I'm gonna wrap around 1 inch to cover up the edge. All right, I just flipped it over on his face twice to get to the bottom side. And as you can see, all I've been doing is, this is the bottom where it's been wrapped around. So right down here. So I'm just lining it up right with that as I peel the backing off. And just moving down slowly, pressing it onto the back. Oh man. Every little part makes this thing look better and better. Final step, LED lights. I found this kit on Amazon for less than 30 bucks. It's got 100 feet, so it should be plenty. Let me try it out. All right, got a little experimentation going on here. This is the bottom of the screen. I just drilled a 1/2-inch hole through right here so that we can pass the strip through. Now my controller is gonna be in here behind the screen. Let me unplug it. Unfortunately, it's just barely too thick to sit on the rail. So if I had planned ahead of time, I could have dadoed out a little bit of this frame right here to set it in, but there's plenty of room down here so that it's not touching the screen. So I can probably just glue it right here so that it stays off of the front fabric. The power cord is gonna come through a hole in the back of the wall. So it's just going to come directly up into here is my plan. And then I'm just gonna run the strip all the way down along the bottom. Now you can run it along this edge and have it shine out, or you can run it on here and have it project straight against the wall. So I've heard that this is the better option, so it's shining at the wall, because if you have it shining out, away, like straight down the wall, the spacing of the lights can cause weird effects on your wall, and it's more uniform if you just shoot it straight at the wall. Now for my application, when I walk down the door, you come right to the screen from the stairs, and this edge here, you could really see it raveled up. So what I did is I just cut a little bit less than an inch of the leftover felt that I had, and I'm gonna glue it down over the back edge here to hide that. All right, glue approach was a terrible failure. It was just gonna be really messy. I didn't know if it was gonna stick well, but I way underestimated this felt from Carl's. It is awesome. So what I did is I took the piece that was left over after I cut the inch off of it, and I just started it right here. I went up the side, tucked it in, and it seems to be strong enough to be able to hold down that fabric. I have just enough left that a little bit comes up over this lip. Let me show you the process. So I just kind of pushed it in like that. And on the back right here where my finger is, that's beyond the fabric, just pressing it onto the wood, and then up against the back piece of wood. And man, it just looks beautiful, and it's gonna stay, and it's super easy. Started taking the backing off of the tape, and I was planning on thinking I was gonna have to glue this down, but it's holding really strong onto the wood. This particular one has a super sticky tape, so I'm just gonna go ahead and use the tape that comes with it. All right, all the LEDs are on, and another change in plan, as you can tell that I've been doing, I just took some double-sided tape and stuck it right here on the bottom for a couple of reasons. I don't have to worry about worrying about it touching the screen when it's in there, and also as far as plugging it in and removing the screen if I ever need to, it's so much easier just to reach up here, unplug it, pull the screen off. And what I will probably do is drill a hole in the wall, run this wire up behind here, and have it come out right there, just so you don't see the wire there, but that's for another day. And as you can see from any normal height, you can't see that at all unless you're down under the screen. So, are you ready for the big reveal? Well, you guys already saw it at the beginning of the video. I know, spoiler, but it is done. So that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and you will see the rest of the home theater build as it comes to fruition. So I'm very excited. Look forward to being able to actually set this up and show you a picture on the screen. So still don't have a projector yet, but that's coming soon. So stay tuned.